it would be played at 3 p.m.
What
on
are you
Sunday.
talking about?
I'm telling you. Why?
Lose tonight.
Why is
American TV.
what's on that night?
They want the game on national TV in the U.S. in the afternoon.
Football
They don't want
style?
it. They don't want it at 7:30 or 8 on a Sunday. Wow.
Well,
And
I don't believe that would happen.
I don't know. I don't know. I know it was talked about and it was floating around that there could be a 3 p.m. start on Sunday for the Toronto Maple Leafs if they extend their series after tonight.
I actually love it. Change up the feel, change up the juju, have people come in a little earlier to the rink, have everybody's routine get mixed up a little bit.
No nap for the Cats. Frustrated they had to pack.
Less time to think about it. Make them pack. Make them pack.
The first hour, if you missed it, that's the theme of the day.
So I'm looking at
Make 'em pack.
I'm looking at the NBA because there is a Game 7 on Sunday, and it's Denver versus OKC. But that game's at 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be surprising to me if they want to go across. Anyways, worry about that. Please win.
I don't know.
Oh, no.
A guy
Wear
that
the
would know
jersey.
better on television deals and how they affect the league or the
He's
team
fresh off the course.
would be our next guest. It ain't off the rails until this man officially comes on our show, Doug McLean. How'd it go? You golfed, obviously, today.
Yeah, you don't want to ask.
Okay, so
I get invited to this prestigious golf club in Connecticut here, and I have to leave early so I can come for this show. So I didn't have time to even fix my hair for the show. So I wore this hat for the Maple Leafs because they could be on the course as quick as I'm here.
You know, we just spent an hour on our Leaf Edition hour of our show with
dissecting.
There's, as long as there's a breath, there's life. So where do you have them on the chances of extending this tonight?
You know what? They're talented enough to do it, but everybody's talking. Are they a team? I was saying the other day. Somebody said, "Well, our group this, our group that," and I'm thinking that if I'm with a group, I go to a movie with a group, or I go and watch something with a group, but I don't play hockey as a group. You're a team. So they got to play like a team. And they were god-awful the other night. I was so disappointed in how that game shook out. And not only that, it's been 2 in a row where they've been horrible. Let's not kid ourselves. And, 2 in a row this time of year, it's hard to win series,
Can I ask you?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah, go ahead.
It reminds me so much of when I was in Detroit. We had Stevie Yzerman, who was a 50-goal scorer in the regular season. And in the playoffs, Stevie Y really, really struggled early in his career. And people forget, Steve Yzerman won his first Stanley Cup in year 14 of his career. Year 14 of his career, he won his first Stanley Cup. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
It is.
And I think of Matthews and Martin. I think back to Stevie Y. We lost to Toronto in Game 7. He really struggled in that series. Borcheski, you guys will recall, maybe scored the winning goal in that series in Game 7 against us in Detroit. We had a really good team. We're up 2-0 in that series and blew it. The next year we lost to San Jose. And all of a sudden, Lidstrom becomes a real player, and the Russian 5 become real players with Larionov and Konstantinov and all the group there, Kozlov. And all of a sudden, Stevie Y becomes the greatest captain in the history, one of the greatest captains in the history of the game, when he was surrounded by a lot better team.
So what you're telling, what you're telling Leaf fans is, hang in there for another 6 years.
I'm not, maybe this will be the last time I ever address the Leafs fans, Look, I'm not telling you to hang in for 6 years. They could win tonight. I just, I was saying they were finally had their bottom 6 was better. They were tougher. They play a better game. Their blue line was better. Their goaltending's the best that it's been forever. And then I watched the last two games and I said, how wrong could I be? They were horrible the last two games. And I'm sorry. I just, I don't know. I don't know. Look, if this ends tonight, it's going to get really ugly as to how to rebuild this team. And we've said it forever. How do you build a team with four guys making that kind of money?
All right.
How do you do it?
I just want to go back just to that game 5 for a second here. Okay, you've been a coach, you've been a general manager, you've been a president. If you would have watched that early and say you're upstairs at any point in game 5, would you have come down to the dressing room either during the game or after the game and address it, Mac? Would you have tried to find out answers to why on a home night when you've been kind of prepped for this the past 8 years you would come out like that?
Do you remember, and I thought of this the other night during the game, do you remember a year ago was it a year ago that Paul Maurice called the timeout and went absolutely ballistic on his team on the bench?
That was, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was regular season.
At the end of the regular season.
The year they lost.
It turned them around.
Yeah.
It turned them around. They became a different team. And I have to give Paul credit for that. And that was a drastic move because there's times you do that, you can lose your team as well. You can lose your team if you blow the game or you don't win. And guys are looking, who's this crazy guy on the bench? But this group needs, I thought Berube this year was giving them a jolt. And I think he has, and I think he's done a good job. I really do. But they just don't get it. They can't get it to the next gear. Now, I hope I'm so wrong and they win tonight and bring it back for a game 7. But I'm having a hard time having faith in them. I really am.
Mac, do you put any stock in, we've talked about Austin Matthews' injuries, whether he has a significant back injury or, this recurring wrist thing. Do you put any stock in that for maybe why he's not producing as much?
How can he have a hand injury or whatever they say and take every face off?
Tough.
If you have a hand injury or a wrist injury or a thumb injury, you're not taking face-offs. Am I wrong in that?
I guess it depends on the severity.
And dominating.
And he's taken every face-off.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something wrong with him because he's too good a player to be playing like this. But I'm telling you, his game reminds me so much of Stevie Y's. It's scary.
Really?
It's scary. It really does. And I mean, 50 goals in the regular season for Stevie, and he put so much pressure on himself that he couldn't perform. And then, as I said, as the team got better, Stevie Y became one of the great leaders of the game. But I'm telling you, I remember sitting in the stands with him during that Leafs series, and he was struggling big time, mentally struggling because he wanted to do it so badly, and he wasn't getting it done. So, and Marner,